All right, good night, good evening, everyone. It's August 13th. Welcome to Indivisible Hope's meeting on Zoom. This is our August meeting, and past years we've skipped August, but this year we're plowing ahead because it's a pretty important year for various reasons, as I'm sure everyone knows. So tonight we have with us a very special guest, another attorney, Philadelphia-based attorney. He does campaign finance law, ethics, compliance. He's been quoted in newspapers all across the state. He's represented people in courts all across Pennsylvania. Our guest tonight is Adam Bonin. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you do campaign finance law, election law. That is a pretty small niche. You want to tell people how you got into that?
So I started off as an unhappy lawyer. And my first 7 years.
You could have just said lawyer.
What?
You could have just said lawyer.
Yeah, well, I think it's worth giving the context. But after 7 years at large firms in Philadelphia, I wasn't happy with my practice, and I didn't understand why. And I thought maybe I wasn't supposed to be a lawyer. So I left my job and I hooked up with Joe Huffle's 2004 U.S. Senate campaign, thinking maybe the problem is that I'm not supposed to be a lawyer in the first place. A year in politics, doing all sorts of tasks for that campaign, led me to two conclusions. Number one, I actually missed being a lawyer. I missed writing on the level of complexity that lawyers do, and I recognized that in the campaign world, it was going to take forever to get to that level, and it wasn't quite the same, and it wasn't quite the right skill set for me. But number two, I was much happier every day when I was doing something that I really cared about. So when I moved back into the law, and I'd been looking at a lot of public interest law firms at the time, I ended up going with a large firm in the city, Cozen O'Connor, because they had a very particular need. They needed someone to join them on their 9/11 team, the group that was representing insurance companies and others who had been damaged by the September 11th attacks, suing the people who had caused the attacks, namely, the Saudi government and those who funded Al-Qaeda.
Right.
And this may be a longer answer than you were expecting here, but it's a good story.
It's fine.
And I was happy again. And they needed someone just to do briefs and motions. That's the part of the law I enjoyed doing most. It was a great fit. Two things happened within about 2 months of my starting at Cozen in 2005, which then put me onto this path. Number one is that we had another associate join us who was recently out of the military and had spent some time with the Kerry campaign in Pennsylvania, named Patrick Murphy. That's a name which should be familiar to many of the people here, because Patrick, in March of 2005 when we met, we sat down for lunch at Coventry Deli at 20th and Market, and he asked me, so what do you know about the 8th Congressional District? And since, like him, I had grown up just outside of Bucks County, I knew quite a lot about it. And from that point forward, I was, one of his sounding boards from the campaign and was attorney for his, successful congressional campaigns. Hell, he and I are doing a panel tomorrow at Netroots Nation, so he and I are still very much still in touch. The other thing that happened is that the Federal Elections Commission announced that they were going to do a rulemaking to figure out how the McCain-Feingold law should apply to the internet. Were bloggers actually acting as political action committees? Did they have to register? If you promoted a candidate on your site, what kind of disclaimer was required? What do we do when bloggers get paid? All sorts of really interesting issues, and I knew that bloggers needed to have a voice in that process. I was friends with a lot of them. Cozen O'Connor was kind enough to give me pro bono credit, given the First Amendment implications, and so I had a 1.5-year long subsidized course in federal election law, where I got to do everything from, an FEC rulemaking process to preparing clients to testify on Capitol Hill about these issues, to public relations and all sorts of things. We won that fight. The FEC largely decided to leave bloggers alone, which meant that I sort of put myself out of the knows a lot about internet on the, campaign finance on the internet questions, because I made them irrelevant. But it meant that within Cozen O'Connor, I became the guy who knew a little bit of something about that. And so as things in this space emerged, whether it was a client who wanted to form a PAC, whether it was the fact that we had absorbed a lobbying practice from Wolf Block's Shore and Solace Cohen when that firm dissolved and they needed someone to do compliance, whether it was clients who wanted to have policies on giving gifts to public officials, they kept bringing me in for that. And so over the course of my 7 years at Cozen, I did an increasing amount of this work. And it got to the point where if I actually wanted to make this my career, I needed to leave the firm. I needed to leave the firm for two reasons. Number one, there were a lot of just conflicts of interest between the work that I wanted to do and the work of a large law firm, things that were understandable and unavoidable and completely sensible decisions for the firm to make. And number two was that, frankly, candidates can't afford big law firm rates for most of their campaigns.
Right.
So armed with that, we made a deal at the end of 2011 and was very wonderful and generous of them again, which was, I agree, I would leave the firm. They would treat me as a tenant of the firm. I would just move to another office, on one of the floors. And whenever the firm had a client who needed someone to do the stuff that I do, we had a set rate in place. But I was really on my own and able to take on clients as I saw fit. So that happened in January of 2012. This is now my, ninth year as a solo practitioner. And, ever since it's been great, this is a niche field. There aren't a lot of people who do what I do as their sole practice outside of DC. There's an increasing number of us because of how things have grown more complicated, especially post Citizens United, such that nonprofit tax law plays into a lot of this as well. But, I do everything to represent candidates, party entities, politically active nonprofits, businesses and labor unions who need compliance advice. And it's everything from, as you said, campaign finance and election law, lobbying law, pay to play, ethics investigations, just all sorts of fun things. I mean, look, what I always tell candidates who are getting started is that what they are doing is they are forming 6, 7, sometimes 8-figure nonprofits that have to get off the ground quickly and function for a year, basically, to get elected that first time. And
Right.
Those nonprofits can need everything from an employment law attorney to someone to look at leases to, consulting stuff. And there are all sorts of things that arise during a campaign that you need to know a little bit about everything for. So it's been a lot of fun.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it's been a terrific path and it's worked out pretty well, obviously. I mean, you've gotten to do some pretty interesting stuff. Talk to me a little bit about Citizens United and how that's made things more complicated in this world.
Well, sure. I mean, Citizens United, as everyone in this call knows, says that, if an expenditure is truly independent, then Congress no one can regulate it because it can't corrupt anyone, and therefore corporations can do that too. And there's a subsequent decision of the DC Circuit called Speech Now, which says, well, if one corporation can do it, then there's nothing wrong with lots of corporations getting together to do it, and that's what formed super PACs. So between the two of them, you have a few things that get enabled. Number one is that nonprofits which can do some politics, namely 501c4 and 501c6 organizations, now could play in politics in a way that they couldn't before. It meant that super PACs could form, that you have people on the campaign side and on the independent side of a race. And so you need attorneys to create those entities and help clients police those lines. Look, I make no apologies. As long as this stuff is legal and Republicans are doing it, I want to make sure that our side does it just as well.
And do you consult only with Democrats?
Yes. There's only been one exception since I went solo. When Chief Justice Castile was up for retention in 2013, I guess it was. Because I was still in the building at Cozen. Democrats and the trial lawyers supported his retention. His retention chairman was the former chairman of Cozen O'Connor. They asked me if I could do it. I was happy to do it there. But yeah, that's it.
Gotcha. So let's shift gears a little bit. 2020, pretty important year. In terms of Pennsylvania, what's been going on? How is this year different from an election law fight and standpoint? Bring us up to speed on what we don't know and what we're not reading about in the Inquirer. What's happening in the courts in the background?
Well, sure. Well, I mean, first of all, thank goodness for Jonathan Lai at the Inquirer. I hope all of you have his stuff bookmarked. I mean, he was brought in. He's both an incredible reporter and a great statistician. And he's been given the democracy beat. He has been covering, all the barriers to voting and what's going on. He was a tremendous resource and reporter back in, starting in, I think, 2017 with an issue that I've worked on really heavily, namely the rights of hospitalized voters to vote on an absentee basis. He covered that well, and that became part of the Act 77 reform bill, which was put into law back, it was signed by the governor on Halloween of last year. As all of you know by now, Act 77 was a big compromise. Pennsylvanians got the right to vote by mail without an excuse. You did not have to be absent to vote by mail. The counties got funding for the new voting machines, which they were required to get, machines with a paper trail on them. And they eased the process for emergency absentees greatly, among other things. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. We will get to them.
We'll get to them. Yeah.
So let them add up. In exchange for all of this, the Republicans extracted something big. That they outlawed the single button straight ticket vote in general elections. When you show up at the polls in November, if you show up in person, or when you receive your mail-in ballot, there will not be one box or one button that you can push to vote for all of the Democrats automatically. You will have to look at every single race. Republicans believe that by doing so, there will be a significant drop-off vote, especially among minority voters who will skip the row offices or the local races, and it'll help Republicans in those races. I thought it was—
And this is obviously the first election where these things are in place.
Yeah. So this year's primary was going to be the first mail-in election, regardless. Thank God, in retrospect, that we put this in place before COVID, that we already knew, no excuse required mail-in voting, because we see in a lot of states, including Texas, that they don't regard "I want to avoid getting COVID" as a legitimate excuse to not vote in person.
Right. Well, neither did Pennsylvania. I mean,
yeah,
under the previous law.
Yeah, you couldn't. Under Pennsylvania, unless you were physically absent from your town or physically unable to get to your polling place, you had to vote in person. So that's changed. So where are we now? About a month and a half before the June primary, I got involved in a lawsuit on behalf of the Pennsylvania Alliance of Retired Americans. This is a lawsuit brought by attorneys from DC at the firm of Perkins Coie, who are involved in suits like this all over the country. This is a firm that does a lot of democratic election law. Because we knew that mail-in voting under a pandemic needed more than what state law provided. And we had three principal asks there. Number one, that all mail-in ballots come with with postage prepaid. Number two, that because of delays in voting in mail transfer, and especially given Pennsylvania's tight deadline of allowing voters to request a mail-in ballot up to 7 days before Election Day, but having to return them within 7 days, by Election Day itself, that Pennsylvania should shift to a postmark deadline, from a receipt deadline on Election Day to it must be postmarked by Election Day deadline. And number three, especially given the concerns of elderly voters, that voters be allowed to designate a third party to assist them with ballot delivery. That they have the right, to have a friend bring their ballot to the post office, bring their ballot to their Board of Elections. Republicans call this ballot harvesting. We just call this, ballot assistance that people need.
Well, two different things, hopefully, right? Ballot harvesting is them going door to door, taking ballots and maybe falsifying some of them and throwing them out.
Yeah, well, that's
like
the
we've
thing.
seen in North Carolina.
They regard all of that as crooked. We say
Right.
Let people do it, and obviously keep the stuff that's illegal. What the Department of State said throughout that litigation. Look, we know that there could be problems, but we'd rather they be solved on the county level, and we don't know that they're problems yet. And obviously, as we got closer and closer to the election, we knew there were real problems. Montgomery and Delaware and Bucks County in particular were unable to process the late mail-in ballot applications, especially those which came in paper. And so the governor, by executive order, the night before the primary, announced that as to 6 counties actually were facing emergency decrees because of George Floyd-related protests, not because they had election law issues. In those counties, postmark deadline was okay. So that happened there.
So in a world where we are now, where there's no declared state of emergency in those counties, can he do anything on the executive for November?
Well, it's funny you should mention that, because literally about 2 hours ago, and you'll read about this in the Inquirer later tonight or tomorrow, the Department of State made a filing in our case, which is currently before the state Supreme Court, where they conceded that Pennsylvania has a mailing problem. That because of the communications that they've received from the post office, based on their expected delivery times, that there's a significant risk that voters will not have enough time to return their ballots by Election Day. And therefore, the Department of State is agreeing with us that ballots that are received, we're literally still reading this, that basically ballots should have to be put, as long as they're postmarked by Election Day and received within 3 days of Election Day, if they're received by Friday, that they all should count, and that statewide relief is appropriate.
So can the court order that?
Well, that's the thing, and I don't want to speak out of school here. I'm one attorney on a team. But it strikes me that if the parties are in agreement on this, that this is something that we could present to the court for an agreed order.
Right.
Look.
But of course, there's the risk that that a Republican goes to federal court and says.
Well, the Republicans are already trying to get into this case already. They filed motions to intervene a long time ago. The RNC, State Senate Republicans, State House Republicans, etc. So let's put all of that to the side for a second. That because that is a rapidly evolving situation. So so we already won, by the way, on the postmark issue. The Department of State is paying for postage on every envelope, going back and forth now. That's already set. So all of that happened. In the meantime, there are 3 other lawsuits that we need to mention.
All right, take us through.
Number 1, the NAACP of Pennsylvania has sued to try to make it easier to vote in person. That they want basically whatever consolidation has to happen, it should be as minimal as possible, and that voters need as much notice as possible, and that the state needs to be aggressive in allowing for in-person early voting, which state law does allow. It's one of the little things in Act 77, which says that if a voter comes in and orally presents a request to vote in person, that they're supposed to process it on the spot.
Where would they do that? At the county election board?
I'm sorry, what?
Because that's the first I've heard of that. So in other words, technically under Act 77, you can go to your county election board.
Yeah.
And vote early.
Yeah, there is there's an Inquirer article that came out about this earlier this week. They could have done this in the primary, but because COVID, nobody could really organize for this. but it is legal and the counties plan on doing it. That's number one.
And do you know when that can start?
Well, first we need a ballot. And there are challenges in court which were filed on Monday as to the Green Party slate statewide, as well as to a very small number of state legislative candidates who had filed independently. We don't really have a ballot until those cases are resolved.
Right.
So it's going to be at least a few weeks.
But there's nothing in the act that says, 7 days before or 14 days before or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if the act says that counties can start whenever they want, they have to start by X days.
Gotcha.
Okay. So other litigation. Trump campaign sued in federal court in Pittsburgh, managing to get this assigned to I shouldn't say managing to get this assigned. That's an insinuation that's unfair to make. It ended up being assigned to a judge that Trump had nominated to the bench a year or two ago. That's a lawsuit that's trying to make it harder to vote during a pandemic. What the Trump campaign wants in that case, among many things, number one, they want it to be illegal. They want it to be illegal for counties to establish drop boxes other than at their board of elections. They believe that state law says that you have to turn in your ballot at the county board of elections, and that means that they can't make it more convenient. And they think all the drop boxes were illegal. If they're not illegal, then they want to have full notice as to when and where they will be, so that they can monitor them at all times. That's number one. Number two, for those of you who voted by mail, do you remember how you had to put your ballot inside of one envelope and then put that envelope inside another envelope?
Right.
Not everyone follows those instructions. Some people forget that inner security envelope and they just put their ballot in the main envelope.
I think I may have done that now that I'm thinking about it.
So they're being called naked ballots. Trump campaign wants every naked ballot to be thrown out, even though state law doesn't really seem to require it. They also want, and this is something that they tried litigating 4 years ago and lost on. Pennsylvania law right now is that in order to be a poll observer, in order to be appointed to, stay in a polling place all day and watch, you have to be a resident of the county in which you live, in which you're observing. They want that county requirement to be tossed. Why do they want that to be tossed? Because there aren't enough Republicans in Philadelphia to go into all of these Philadelphia polling places and intimidate people. They want to bring in people from the suburbs, from rural parts of Pennsylvania into Philadelphia on election day to be intimidating to people. So they're trying to do that. In the meantime, this is now lawsuit number 4. The state Democratic Party has sued in state court, basically raising the same claims, but on the opposite side, saying, we would like the court to confirm that there is a right to do drop boxes, that naked ballots are legal, etc. The idea being, and without getting too much into the weeds, that the law generally says that when it comes to interpreting state law, federal courts really should defer to state courts if there's an opportunity for the state court to resolve that issue. And that's clearly the case here. So hopefully this suit knocks out that other suit. Those are the 4 principal lawsuits right now. The other thing which is going on right now, and then maybe we could hop over to questions, or obviously whatever else you want to ask me, go ahead, is state legislative reform. Both the House and Senate.
Isn't there also a League of Women Voters lawsuit?
Oh God, yeah. I'm going to try not to editorialize here because I have strong feelings about this one. Right now, if your absentee ballot has some flaw in it, they just basically it just gets rejected. The voter doesn't find out about it. League of Women Voters has sued in federal court, seeking a requirement that all such voters receive notice of the defect and have an opportunity to cure the defect. This makes sense in a vacuum.
Right. Logistically difficult.
The problem is that once you get this into court, then the question becomes, and the Trump campaign is raising this in their suit, well, what are they supposed to do? And in particular, the Trump campaign would like the counties to do a full, rigorous signature match and have the opportunity to challenge signatures themselves, comparing the signature that you put on the outside envelope with your signature in the system, which could be from, when you—
20 years ago.
Yeah, 20, 30 years ago. It's crazy. So, but that lawsuit exists. So in the meantime, there's legislation that's being discussed. And, they've been having hearings on this, and everyone recognizes that Pennsylvania's deadlines did not work in the primary.
Right.
That allowing people to apply to vote by mail as of 7 days before the election, including apply in person, apply on paper, and to have them, process the application, print the ballot, mail the ballot, have the voter consider and vote the ballot, and then get the ballot back to the County Board of Elections is not something that can realistically be done in 7 days in many cases. What is being proposed right now is that deadline move back by a week, that you have to apply by 14 or 15 days before the election in order to vote by mail. In addition, what this legislation would do is allow— God, I just lost my train of thought. It would allow voters to turn in their mail-in ballots at all polling places, and it would allow the County Board of Elections to start pre-canvassing the envelopes. In other words, look at the outside envelope of a mail-in vote, confirm that this is, the right voter, that they signed it, basically open that envelope, open the inner envelope, and line all of the ballots for the hopper to be counted, in the 21 days
before the 8 p.m. cutoff.
Yeah. Well, no, to do that all in the 3 weeks before Election Day, so that 7
Right.
a.m. on Election Day, you can load up all the ballots on the counting machine and just start running them through.
Right. As opposed to the primary, they had to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And some counties were later than others. But yeah, I mean, certainly in this region, all the counties, it took time to count all of these ballots. Who knows when that's going to happen? But that is something that's certainly also in the works.
And is that getting any movement? Or, it's obviously Republican-controlled legislature.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the question is, how interested are they in our not being an embarrassment, and how much do they not care if we look like an embarrassment because doubt about the results helps Donald Trump?
Right.
I mean, I will tell you, there was a lot of serious talk in these hearings. There are Republicans who do care about these issues. Obviously, Act 77 itself was a product of this legislature. So we'll see what happens.
And is this something you think they could get done in time for this election?
Yeah, I think that this will be like right after or around Labor Day. They will do their best to, if it's going to happen, it'll happen soon.
Interesting. Okay. That's an interesting update. Now, how, in terms of the drop boxes, some people aren't aware of this, but, besides a lawsuit, is there anything Trump or the federal government can do to interfere with the drop boxes and that method of delivery?
Other than the lawsuit, what else could they do about drop boxes?
It seems like nothing, right? Like it's a county issue.
Yeah, it's a county issue.
Which is reassuring.
Yeah, but look, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to give anyone any idea. If you're recording this and this is going to be available somewhere, I don't want to give anyone
that's
any
true.
ideas.
We don't want to give them any ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of how they can stir up more trouble.
Yeah.
So when it comes to what we've been hearing in the news about the Postal Service, how worried should we be? And is there anything we can do about it? In terms of not getting the ballots in time, not having enough manpower,
look, this is not an issue in which our members of Congress need to be informed about the issue. They get it. They know it. They're fighting for it. All we can do is, look, this is the tightrope. We want to raise public awareness about these problems without scaring people away who can safely vote by mail, especially people who apply early, get their ballots early, and turn them around quickly. But yeah, it's a real problem.
I think what we're telling people is, look, if you can get to one of those drop boxes, get to the drop box, right? Or do you think that's bad advice in case the Trump campaign succeeds in the Western District?
I mean, here's the thing. None of the counties are putting look, there's no ballots out yet. No one's putting drop boxes out yet. The counties aren't going to do so until they feel legally confident that they will be able to count those votes. So if drop boxes are out there, you should feel safe using them.
All right, good message. Good message. And if we, in terms of lawsuits, I mean, is there any litigation that you're aware of nationwide against the post office or against the postmaster general for essentially taking a dive?
I'm not aware of that. I got enough going on right here, right now.
Yeah, right. Because I know that was a question that somebody had, is whether or not there is any exposure to the new postmaster general for that kind of behavior. But it seems like we have enough local issues.
Yeah. Let me see. Let me look through these questions. Yeah. How should we tell people to vote to make sure that it's counted? Look, voting in person on a machine is the most reliable way. Second to that, I would say would be a drop box. And third would be the mail. But the earlier you do it, the safer and more reliable it will be.
Or the county board of election if there's no drop boxes.
Yeah, exactly. But, depending on what county you're in, it could be a long trip. Whether you're talking about from Northeast Philadelphia to City Hall, or from Abington to Norristown, or from many parts of Chester County to get back to Westchester. I mean, these are not small places, and especially people who don't want to travel because of COVID in the first place. It's a hike. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why they did the drop boxes in the first place in the primary. I mean, you're schlepping from Pottstown to Norristown is a long drive.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Okay. The name of the Philadelphia Inquirer reporter, Eric wants to know, it's Jonathan Lai, L-A-I. Let's see. Tom Nolan wants to know, are you automatically registered to receive a ballot in November? Only if you asked for it. This was a checkoff box in your mail-in application then. So if you're not sure if you registered to receive a mail-in ballot for November, go to Votes PA. You can check your status there and apply if necessary.
Right. And that's the same answer to people that are asking, how do I know the status of my ballot? It'll tell you when it's mailed. It'll tell you when it's received. And you can also put in your email address and it'll send you emails for all that stuff.
Yeah. And there is also a thing on the PA Voter Services website to check the status of your ballot. And they will send you an email when your ballot is received. They will send it on all steps of the process. The date that your application was accepted, the date that your ballot was mailed, and the date that they received it back. So they are tracking all of that. The envelopes are all barcoded for that reason.
So each barcode is to an individual ballot.
Yes.
And am I correct? I mean,
once you take the ballot outside of the two envelopes, there is no individual marking on it. It can't be attached to an individual voter at that point. No one will know how you voted.
Right. And in terms of once you've requested a mail-in ballot, you're then precluded from voting in person? Is that accurate?
Not quite. Under the law, right now, you can walk in, starting in November, you can walk your mail-in ballot to your polling place, give it to the judge of elections, who will destroy it and then allow you to vote on a machine. That's number one. Number two, if you never received it at all or don't have it, you can ask for a provisional ballot to vote in person. And as long as you haven't voted through some other means, that ballot will be counted. And number three, as I said, under the statute, under the proposed law, you could just hand in your envelope to the judge of elections and they can accept it there.
But that's the one piece that's pending. We're waiting on legislation on that.
Yeah, exactly. So can you always drop off your ballot at the Board of Elections? Yeah, I mean, either in the office or in a drop box. We'll see what the state of COVID and government affairs is right now, come September, in terms of how open these offices will be. Jonathan Cooker wants to know, what can we do to support any of the current lawsuits? I don't want to fundraise for myself here. We're funded by Priorities USA. They do a nice job. The NAACP of Pennsylvania can certainly use your assistance. The Pennsylvania Democratic Party can use your assistance as well. So if you have some money, certainly do that. And obviously, if you have stories to tell, like let us know. Let the Pennsylvania Democratic Party in particular know about difficulties that you're having.
Yeah, Jonathan's also asking, so he's in Germany, actually. He's joining us at about 12:30 his time in the morning,
I mean,
so we appreciate him.
Yeah, I see that. And he wants to know about, there's naked ballots on foreign. I mean, those rules are separate under, UOCAVA and the MOVE Act. I wouldn't worry. Whatever they send you, use it and it'll count. This is only an issue as to state law with mail-in ballots.
Sharon Ruth is asking, do you need a driver's license to get a mail-in ballot? I would think not.
No, driver's license helps, but with you won't be able to apply online, but with the paper application, you can give the last four of your social to verify your identity. And you can apply.
Excellent. I'm just scrolling back through some of these other questions here as well.
Sure.
Oh, Louise had asked when we'll know the locations of the local polling places. Are there hard deadlines in for that from a state standpoint, or is that county to county?
There are under state law. I mean, the truth is that the counties are still assessing how many poll workers they can get. There are heavy recruitment efforts. They also have to see which locations exist. Obviously there are a lot of private locations that are not interested in hosting elections during a pandemic.
Right.
So they don't know yet. I see.
And what's I mean, from a state standpoint, what's the deadline?
I think it's like 2 weeks out. It's either 2 or 3 weeks out that they're supposed to announce it.
Okay.
And that after that date, like they need court permission to move things further.
Jonathan's also asking, how concerned should we be about our signature?
Not right now, not very. But if the Republicans win, then it's a pain in the ass, and let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
If we come to it, hopefully we don't.
Yeah, and hopefully we won't ever.
Right. Because right now, I mean, just so people know, when you go to the polling place, it's the same signature that you have on file when you sign the book. That book, when you look at it next time you're there, when they flip it around, they can see an old signature that you put on file, and then whatever you're signing, they're kind of comparing that at the polling place is the idea.
Yeah, but again, like the counties don't believe that they're competent to do this. They're not.
To do what?
To do signature matching.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's not their job. They're not experts.
I mean, in a legal context, you need to be an expert unless you have familiarity with that person's signature.
Oh yeah, I mean, it is and I've used those experts in cases. I was trained by the FBI for 20 years. I worked in the bank fraud unit of Wells Fargo. Like, you need like real experience for this.
Right.
Kirsten, I see your question about the Western PA timeframe.
She's saying oral argument in that case is scheduled.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is a real concern. Because I'm involved in that litigation, I don't feel comfortable editorializing here. But I think you raise a good question.
But from a broad standpoint, I mean, district courts notoriously take forever to decide things. So if nothing's decided, then that's good, because then they haven't granted the Trump campaign's relief. I mean,
it's not good because, it opens the specter of post-election litigation, which no one wants.
True. I mean, there's going to be post-election litigation. I think there's no question of that, right? Or do you think?
If we win by enough, there's not.
Yeah, well, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Win by enough so that he can't say it was fraud, but he's going to say it anyway.
Yeah. When we find out where the drop boxes will be located, John wants to know, Janine, the answer is when the counties decide, and they don't want to say anything until there's more clarity from the courts. And look, I'm friends with a lot of the county election officials. They're not talking to me about it. I see Jonathan has another question. I really I'm not comfortable offering opinions on that litigation as to where things are going. I'm sorry.
It's tough. You're in the case. Yeah, you can't just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can
And how
tell
many
you what
lawyers are on
has
that
happened.
case?
I don't want to tell you what will happen or what I think should happen.
And is that, so when you have these cases, is that like 5 lawyers, 10 lawyers? How do those teams work?
We have on our team alone, Perkins has lawyers. Most of them are based in DC. One's in Seattle, one's in San Francisco, one's in Anchorage.
So how many names are on that brief?
I think we've got 8 or 9. Plus we have
Okay.
local counsel in Pittsburgh. I mean, there are lots of DC lawyers on these cases. There are lawyers from all over the country involved. Like, yeah, there's 100. Is it clear that you can apply right now for your mail-in ballot and they'll be distributed in mid-September? I think that's realistic expectations.
Yes.
Can anyone volunteer to help count mail-in ballots? No. I mean, you know, these are county employees, you know, who are working under oath. Like, this is not a place for partisan people to be involved, you know, because that way introduces danger.
Now, do they have observers like they did during the hanging Chad recount?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every candidate and every party can have observers for everything.
So they can be there when they're doing the scanning.
Yeah.
In Norristown or Westchester or wherever.
Absolutely. Okay.
And now, are you involved in any litigation outside of Pennsylvania?
Not on this. No. And again, there's more than enough to go on here.
Yeah.
So much of state law is state specific that, I mean, of election law rather, is state specific that there are people who do it in multiple states, but not many.
Let's see here. Yeah, people just asking about dates. Yeah, so if you haven't applied yet, definitely go to the Pennsylvania Department of State website, Votes PA. Vote or votes?
Votes.
S. Votes with an S, PA. Get that application in. You know, having spoken to the commissioners in Montgomery County, at least, they're really leaning on people to do it electronically instead of the print, because then they don't have to read your handwriting. The big concern is that you send it in print, in handwriting, and you have bad handwriting, they might not be able to read your address, and then they might not be able to read your phone number, so then they can't follow up with you to get it corrected. So do it online. Go do it as soon as we're off this call. Don't leave the call to do it, but as soon as you're done here, go apply so that you get it in time. Our conversations that we've had on the party side from the county is that they've changed vendors in Montgomery County, because for the primary, they had a vendor that didn't get anything printed until very, very late. So they should be coming out earlier this time. And then as soon as you get them, send them back in or take them wherever the instructions are to take them. Don't sit on your ballot. Yeah.
Okay. I actually, because of what broke today, I actually need to get going if that's okay.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Well, I appreciate you joining us, and I appreciate you breaking that news.
No problem.
So it sounds like we're going to be reading a little bit about it in the Inquirer tonight or tomorrow.
Yep. You know, what it's funny. What I tell my family is, you know, at a certain point, and it started about 2 weeks ago, they're all going to be busy days until about Thanksgiving. I hope that it wraps up by Thanksgiving this year.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Listen.
Or before.
Yeah. Well,
not that I don't want you to be busy.
Somewhere in Pennsylvania, there's going to be a state house race that's going to be close enough that I'm going to be involved. Like, just mathematically, it has to happen.
Right.
So we'll see. But listen, I love indivisible groups. Thank you all so much for all the work that you're doing to help our democracy and to get rid of this fascist idiot. So have a good night, everyone.
Well, Adam, thanks for joining us. Go keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm going to bring Christine in. What'd you think? It was pretty good, pretty informative.
This was extremely informative. Yeah, extremely good.
Anyone have any questions for me and Christine while we're here?
More for you. So
well,
I'm still a law student.
Both lawyers.
You know?
Yeah, well, Does anyone have any questions about German law? Jonathan, any German law questions to throw at Christine?
I'm not, yeah, that's a question for Christine. I'm not a German lawyer, so I can't guess my way through it. Did somebody take notes on this, actually? I took a
Well, we're
few,
recording
but
it, so it'll come out as a podcast. So you can re-listen, speed it up, fast forward, rewind.
because I'm not trying to cut everything. That's great. Thanks.
Josh?
Yeah, Cheryl, do you have a question?
Yeah, I want to know why Trump keeps saying that the absentee vote is fine, but the mail-in vote is not, is fraudulent. Why?
Well, I don't like to speak for the president, but if I had to guess, it's because he and everyone in his family and everyone in his staff and everyone in the White House votes absentee because they live in DC, but they don't vote mail-in. Which, like in Pennsylvania, is a distinct thing. So under the law in Pennsylvania, technically, if you are going to be absent, you have to vote absentee. It's
Right.
a different application. So what he's saying is, because originally he said all these mail-in ballots are horrible, and then everyone said, well, but you're voting with a mail-in absentee ballot. So that's why he is making that very, very thin distinction, I think.
There is a much stronger distinction, which is in one case you take the initiative, in the other case the party takes the initiative. That is a huge difference.
You take,
Well, in Pennsylvania, so Tom was saying, because in some states they're mailing out the ballots. In other words, they send it to everyone, but if you want an absentee, you have to request it. Obviously, in Pennsylvania, you have to request it either way. You just have to make sure you request the right one.
Historically, the lower the turnout, the better that the Republicans typically do. So eliminating mail-in ballots will reduce the turnout. I'm sorry if he said this and I missed it. I'm registered for mail-in voting, and I just received an email saying I'll get it in September or October. He raised my awareness or concern about mail-in and said that the ballot boxes are probably safer. Do I use my mail-in ballot and take that to a ballot box, or do I need a different ballot to take to a ballot box?
No, it's just there's only one ballot that's going to come out. And eventually the counties, assuming this Trump lawsuit doesn't succeed, Montgomery County, at least in the primary, had boxes all over the county, half a dozen of them or so, where you could take your mail, even though it's called a mail-in ballot, you could take it to those drop boxes so you don't have to, A, trust the USPS, or B, schlep to Norristown. So there'll probably be more guidance on that and articles in the paper, and I'm sure Indivisible and the local Democratic parties will be putting out information as it becomes available.
That we can.
Thank you.
Josh, I just have a question. I just saw before this whole thing started, it's been reported that a judge in Pennsylvania has given Trump until Friday to produce evidence of massive voter fraud, because apparently that's what he is alleging in his lawsuit.
Is that the Western District case that we were talking about in Pittsburgh?
I'm not sure.
Yes, I posted
I
that.
assume so.
You posted. Okay.
I posted that on the site. That's what I actually asked him, if he has any opinion on it, and that's where he refused. He wisely opted not to reply. So all I know is it's in that article. I can't imagine what they could possibly unearth in the next 24 hours to prove voter fraud when they've been unwilling and unable to produce it thus far. The one party to the suit, I read the docket the other day, had already asked for this, and then they filed a motion to compel them to provide it, and that's what I think this order is.
So it is supposed to be by tomorrow.
That's what the article said. I haven't read the docket, but that was clear in the article.
Okay, so what would be the next step if they're not able to produce anything? It just gets thrown out?
Well, it depends on how the lawyers want to handle it. I mean, if the judge orders it and then you can't produce it, whether it's a motion for summary judgment or a motion for...
It's a motion to dismiss for failure to state a claim. So therefore, I would assume that this is pretty key. If they can't produce any evidence of fraud, then it would be helpful for the motion to dismiss.
Right, okay, so it's null and void. Okay, all right, thanks.
Yeah. Who else? I'm trying to see. There's a lot of screens going here.
I have a question, Josh.
Okay, I'm listening.
We actually did sign up to get our mail-in ballot, and we were notified that we're going to get it. But I'm starting to think I want to vote in person. So can we actually say we don't want to have that? I mean, it looked like from this notification that maybe we could notify them that we don't want a mail-in ballot.
So what Adam was just saying is that, I mean, you might be able to call the county board of elections and say we don't want it and see if they can kind of halt the process. Well, actually, no, you'd have to call the Department of State because that's the state gives you the ballots. But I would call the county and see if they can do anything about it. But what he was saying is that right now, under the law, you can take that ballot to the voting place on election day, and the judge of election is supposed to destroy that ballot and let you
And
vote.
then you can vote. So maybe that's the best
The
thing.
problem, I mean, I think if you've already requested the ballot, get the ballot, put it in the drop box.
Okay.
Because
You think that's
the
the
judge of
safest way to
elections,
do it?
that's the safest way, because the judge of elections may not know that. And then you're going to show up there on election day and they're going to say, I didn't know about this. I don't know what you're talking about. It's going to be a whole to-do. Then they're going to make you cast a provisional ballot, which Adam is right, does get counted, but not till much, much later. And it's a whole hullabaloo. Now, hopefully it won't be that close, so it won't be an issue. But I would say if you're already getting it, it's coming in the mail, take it to the drop box, be done with it. Also, COVID.
What if there are no drop boxes? I mean, then what?
So then if it was me, my plan is if I get it and it's still like late September, early October, send it in. But if it's less than like 3 weeks away, take it to Norristown. I'm assuming they're going to be drop boxes.
Can I just speak?
The email that
to
just
that?
came from the
Go ahead.
Pennsylvania Department of State Voters says if you no longer wish to vote by mail, you may also contact your county election office to change your permanent mail-in ballot status. So you got to contact the county.
We're going to go Cheryl, and then there was somebody else that was trying to talk, but I can't see it all.
It was Eric that was trying to talk.
Eric just did talk, but there was another. I thought there was another woman trying to jump in.
I was just trying to. This is Jonathan from Germany.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan.
Actually from Pennsylvania, but anyway, I noted that down the answer from the lawyer to that precise question in terms of we asked what the safe ways for voting were. He said first, voting in person via machines, the most reliable, then drop box, then dropping your ballot off at the county board of election, then mail very early. That's what I took notes on from him just now.
Right. Yep. And as a reminder, someone pointed out in the chat, it's a good reminder, you can only take your own ballot to the drop box. So you cannot get in the car, Dennis and Jill, you both have to be in the car when you go to the drop box. And then apparently, they have constables. They did during the primary, constables at the drop boxes, making sure that people were only bringing one ballot, their own ballot. Or if there were two of you in the car, obviously each person could then drop their own ballot off. But you can't get grandma's ballot and take it in for her.
And there's also FedEx and UPS and DHL, just to remind.
Right. Then you have to pay for it yourself, obviously. But yeah, if you wanted to send it that way to the county board of elections, I think the drop boxes are going to happen, and it's not going to be. There'll be many, many issues, but that won't be one of them. We'll have 99 problems, but a drop box won't be one. To paraphrase
I don't know if anybody heard, but I heard that Amazon was going to, Bezos was going to step up and say he will deliver them for free through Amazon. Is that any?
I can't imagine.
No.
I don't
know. I don't know. I saw something like that on, maybe not for free, but that he was going to have a service so you could mail in your ballots that way.
Yeah, but only if you have a Prime membership. So. So only Prime members get to vote. I should probably be pretty good
a figment of someone's imagination then. Okay.
Yeah, or wishful thinking.
But as Jonathan says, you could pay, say, Federal Express or someone to mail the ballot for you instead of throwing it in the post office.
You could, right? If it's getting close, At the same time, you could always drive it to Norristown or
Yeah,
Westchester or
I'm
Doylestown.
just figuring what the situation is.
Although we should I'll have someone look into that if they're going to be accepting packages. Because I'm not sure about that.
What do you mean? Because I called my county board of election and told them I'm FedExing it in, and they said.
And they were
that's
okay
fine.
with that?
Well, why could they not be? Like, they shut down the post office, but then if we use another form of shipment, that's unacceptable. That doesn't really, I wouldn't put it past these guys, but yeah.
Well, right. I mean, I don't know what the rules say in terms of the receipt, right? Because you can take it there in person and you can drop it in the mail. And I didn't know what their manpower situation was during COVID. Like, is someone there checking the FedEx and the DHL, et cetera? But if they said it's good, and what county is that?
Lancaster.
If Lancaster's doing it, I'm sure it'll be fine in Montgomery.
I
would think.
Why can't the DNC negotiate with UPS or FedEx it's not going to take many days. Just negotiate with them a lower price if the post office is not going to be able to, to deliver.
Well, I don't think I don't know. From a legal standpoint, I don't think we really want to be in a scenario where the parties are taking care of delivering the ballots and negotiating those things. I mean, it really should be the government doing it. Because think about what happens then, right? It's then you're giving it to a private company who then loses it, or it gets lost in. Not that it can't get lost in the USPS, but at least it's the government, right? And then, but it's all of a sudden if the DNC has a contract with one company, and then the RNC has a contract with another one, and where do independents go? I don't know. To me, that sounds like a road I wouldn't want us to go down. I mean, I see your point that why can't we just sort out another system? But I don't know, in my opinion, that's just like not a slippery slope, but a bad scenario where all of a sudden we're privatizing elections.
Well, we don't have a lot of, I understand what you're saying, but Trump is doing this to our post office, to our post offices, so sometimes you have to fight back and expect them not to be able to deliver everything we're hoping they're going to deliver. So
yeah, I think the answer to that is going to be these drop boxes.
Well, I do too. Hopefully. I just think we have to count on everything being screwed up and us figuring out a way to get it done. And then if it works out fine, great. But if it doesn't, we better have a backup plan. Because the Republicans always have a backup plan.
I had written to a lawyers group with a similar proposal, if not party-based, but if just voters in general could not request management of FedEx or UPS to step in and deliver ballots for us, regardless of party. But I also agree with what you've said about not having a private company do that, but they want to privatize the USPS. So I guess that would be a problem anyway. It was a thought I had as well to get around it.
But I think it'd be a different scenario if the county had a contract with a third party. That'd be a different, in my opinion, at least, that would be a different situation. If the county said, okay, we're not going to do drop boxes, but you can take your ballot to any UPS and they will get it to us. It essentially becomes a drop box, but just a different way of doing it. To me, what's the difference, right? Because none of us have any authority to do any of these things, and we're just spitballing. But to me, that is better than the parties figuring it out on their own. All right, well, it's 8:00. It's been, I think, a pretty good program. Does anyone have any questions or anything we should talk about before we wrap up here? I think everyone's homework for tonight is to go to votespa.com. Make sure you've requested your mail-in ballot if that's the way you want to vote, or if you think that's the way you're going to want to vote. Keep in mind, we don't know what the COVID situation is going to be in 2 months, let alone 2.5 months. So, I've already registered. Go on your friend's phone, go on your family member's phone, make sure they're registered, text like 3 people after we hang up, hey, did you get your mail-in ballot yet? And then hopefully everyone you know is voting not for Trump. So if it's someone you think might vote for Trump, don't text them. Text your friends that are going to vote for Biden, and also for all the candidates down the ballot. Remember, you got to fill out every box, right? So there's no straight party voting. You have to fill out every box. There's a lot of boxes, but we do it twice a year. Don't be lazy. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks to Indivisible Hope as always for having me / forcing me to do these. And Christine's laughing, but it looks like she's in a different room, but she's right over there making me do this. But that's okay. That's what I do. Everyone have a terrific night. Stay safe. Stay home. Stay out of trouble. Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Thank you, Josh.
Night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.